Yeah, the world is ending. We've heard it all before. Whether it's climate change or fire and brimstone, it's inevitable. The world's gonna end last year, or this year, or next year. First up, we have the Chilean Megathrust. It's no secret that Chile has unfortunately become home to many earthquakes over the years, including the cataclysmic rupture of the 9.5 magnitude earthquake that took place in 1960, in which roughly 560 to 620 miles of rock along the stretch of the Nazca tectonic plate broke apart. So you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, this was supposed to be a list of natural disasters for 2024. Well, have no fear. Or do, because it's predicted that another West Coast earthquake disaster is ready to go at any minute, with some referring to the inferred event as the Chilean Megathrust. Not only this, but the ominously named Megathrust is also predicted to be followed up by a devastating tsunami. Again, you're thinking, okay, that's terrible, but how does it translate to the end of the world? Well, you see, much like these questions, earthquakes are reoccurring, and action triggers action, meaning the more we have, the more we get. Now, for my Canadian friends out there who are thinking that because of the Canadian Shield they don't need to worry, remember that not only do earthquakes trigger earthquakes, but they can also cause erosion and even breakage to the tectonic plates beneath the Earth's surface. So who really knows how long that protection is gonna last? Next up, we have landslides, and I do apologize to the Stevie Nicks fans because no, I am not talking about Fleetwood Mac, but rather the movement of a massive amount of land, rock, or debris down a slope with the power to wipe out mountainous towns, islands, cities, and more. A recent study released by NASA in 2020 claims that the rising of the Earth's average temperature, along with excess rainfall, has put specifically Asia at extreme risk of landslides, with an increase in both frequency and magnitude. These events could cause a diminish in fresh water supply, a creation of landslide dams, which is debris piled up and blocking waterways, causing flooding. These events can also cause damage to many areas downstream of the origin site, even up to hundreds of miles away. If you live in a relatively flat area, you can breathe easy tonight, but maybe not that easy. You see, most of the world relies heavily on trade with Asian countries, so even if the landslides don't get us directly, who knows what it could do to the economy. Moving on to ecological catastrophe, aka ecosystem collapse. Now, it's debatable whether or not this particular event would or would not be considered a natural disaster, as it's largely due to humans' impact on the Earth. But seeing as it pertains to the loss of natural diversity on a global scale, I personally would classify it as such. You see, as we grow to meet the demands of our growing population, we are clearing lands and natural agriculture, causing a decline and displacement of many plants and animals. When this happens, certain populations decline, which can put the whole ecosystem out of whack. For instance, the decline in moose population in Canada has allowed more balsam fir saplings to live, as they're no longer being gobbled up by the giant creatures. Fir trees pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So, mathematically, more fir trees, less carbon dioxide. The balance of the Earth is disrupted, which in turn leads to changes in air quality, massive changes in plants and animal populations, and extreme weather disturbances, which very well might lead to our downfall. Speaking of extreme weather disturbances, next up we have wildfires. I've seen it, you've seen it, we've all seen it over the past few years. Wildfires have been everywhere, from California to Canada, all the way over to Australia, and everywhere in between. Scorched earth is on the rise. But the crazy part is, wildfires actually used to be a good thing. A forest's way of releasing valuable nutrients stored on the forest floor in order to regenerate plants and vegetation and create a highly lush and biodiverse environment. The problem is that they've gotten out of hand. Well, kind of. Of course, we recognize the tragedy of fires caused by the hands of humans and gender reveals, but the reason natural forest fires have become such a threat to communities lies largely to do with the fact that communities have become such a threat to forests. You see, as cities expand and move outwards, we take up more land, and eventually that land pushes into the domain of the forest, and therefore forest fires. This of course leads to disasters and tragedy within the directly affected communities, along with widespread decline in air quality as the fire spreads into unfamiliar territory and begins burning more than the natural native resources. Fire, now water. I feel like Avatar. Next up, we have floods. Whether they are due to rising water levels or torrential downpour, floods have the ability to devastate populated areas and displace millions of people from their homes, disrupting life on a local, national, and even international level. The countries affected contribute to the economic success of others. In 2023, in India alone, over 12 million people had to flee for their lives after deadly floods and landslides devastated homes in Nepal and Bangladesh. And we are seeing this happen more frequently, whether it be due to climate change and rising sea levels, or a decrease in biodiversity leading to a change in air quality causing heavy rainfall. Some other countries who are at high risk for flooding include Nigeria, the Philippines, Yemen, Kenya, Chad, Japan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Somalia. Taking it down south for this next one, we have Caribbean tsunamis. So I actually grew up on a small island in the Caribbean, and while we did do fire drills, we actually did earthquake and tsunami drills way more. When the alarm went off for the earthquake drill, we would take shelter under tables or door frames, and then, because generally tsunamis follow soon after, the entire student body would gather outside and climb to the top of a small nearby mountain. Now mind you, it was a small school of about 250 people, but it still took over half the day. In recent years, however, tsunamis have become even more prevalent as the rate of earthquakes increase and sea levels rise. But there's actually another completely different reason that the Caribbean specifically is currently under threat from megawaves, and that reason is a mega unstable volcano located in the Canary Islands. The volcano, located on the island of La Palma, is under close watch as it's dangerously unstable and has the capacity to plunge into the ocean at pretty much any time. According to Dr. Simon Day of the Benfield Hazard Research Centre at the University College of London, such an instance would cause a mega tsunami that could wipe out many island nations. Alright, it's about time to get interstellar up in here, as the next ultimate catastrophe is the collapse of the vacuum, like the literal vacuum of space. So think of our existence as a balloon that's full of air. The air inside of the balloon pushes against this parameter, keeping it full, and in our case, keeping the universe, and specifically Earth, inhabitable. The vacuum in this example would be the empty space. Now, if that vacuum were to collapse, all of the empty space would begin to disappear, as anything that's not empty space, example people, plants, animals, and things, would be pulled together in a giant mass, making that empty space smaller and smaller until it eventually collapses in on itself, thus ending our very existence swiftly and absolutely. On a lighter note, but not really, another possibility for the end of days is the reversal of Earth's magnetic field. You see, every few 100,000 years, the Earth's magnetic field decreases to almost nothing for perhaps a century, then later reappears with the North and South Pole flipped. Here's the thing. The last time this happened was 780,000 years ago, so like, we're due. In fact, in the past century alone, the strength of our magnetic field has already decreased by 5%. Why is this absolutely terrifying? Well, the Earth's magnetic field deflects particle storms, cosmic rays from the sun, and even subatomic particles from deep space. As this protection decreases, we run an increased risk of these particles and rays striking the Earth's atmosphere and further eroding the already dwindling ozone layer. Not to mention, many animals actively rely on the Earth's magnetic field for survival, so who knows what impact this may have on biodiversity. Next up, we have mass insanity. Natural, maybe. Disaster, 100%. I mean, humans are naturally occurring carbon life forms, so I felt like I had to include this one. You see, while globally the human population is improving physically, mental health has been on a steady and worryingly rapid decline. In fact, it is predicted that depression will become the second leading cause of death and loss of productivity, right behind cardiovascular disease. So why is this happening? Well, believe it or not, it's actually a combination of increased lifespan, leaving more time to experience loneliness, and overloading the human brain. This dynamic duo has not only led to an increase in depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues, but also fear-mongering, complacency, pessimism, lack of motivation, as well as an uprising in cults and erratic behavior. Honestly, pretty scary to think about what will become of Earth if we keep on heading down this road. And in our number one spot, you know I had to do it, we have alien invasion. Okay, before you run to the comments and absolutely annihilate me for including this on the list, I'm not actually talking about humanoid extraterrestrials. I'm talking about viruses, specifically ones that span outside of their native range. You see, alien bacteria and viruses have the power to topple agriculture, destroying forests and farmlands alike. It's not just human health we have to worry about. The likelihood of this happening? Well, I'll be honest, alien bacteria and viruses are vastly underrepresented when it comes to ecology studies, which in simple terms just means we don't really know. While it could be a far out possibility, it could also well be a very imminent and very serious threat to life as we know it. And the fact that viruses and diseases are so easily widespread, what with travel by car and train and boats and planes and whatever else there is, I'd say there's a pretty safe bet that it could happen. Again. And then of course there's actual aliens, but let's save that for another time. That's all we have for you today. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, please consider clicking subscribe and hitting that like button. I've been your host, Hannah Thompson. See you next time.